Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
And welcome back to Tip Today. Now, one of our listeners on to say that Brian says it's a ridiculous suggestion that apprentices could be paid a full rate as a tradesman. Now, in fairness, I don't think that's what Dean meant. But anyway, Brian goes on to say, I know that many apprentices are watching and learning the correct method of work and the use of tools, etc., and therefore do little to earn extra for the tradesman. And in fact, the qualified person spends time watching over and tutoring to the detriment of their own productivity. That's why the pay rate is lower, says Brian to us. So that's his opinion on 083 311 3311. Now it's time to talk global news, and glad to be joined as usual by Thomas Conway of the Nina Guardian. Good morning to you, Thomas.
Good morning, Fran.
Good to see you today. Will we talk about Minneapolis and ICE first of all, because another very difficult time there in the States?
Yeah, indeed. And people will at this stage, I suppose, be up to date with the facts, although the facts are hotly disputed. 37-year-old male Alex Pretty shot dead by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, by ICE officers. It comes 2 weeks after the death of Renee Good, a 37-year-old female mother of three, who died in similar circumstances. And I think, last week the spotlight was on President Trump's foreign policy agenda. It has jumped this week, or this weekend, and suddenly we're looking at immigration again and the domestic agenda, and the question of whether, in the words of the Minnesotan governor, Tim Walz, whether this will be an inflection point for America. Now, a lot of people will have watched the footage. The Homeland Secretary, Kristi Noem, who was a member of the Trump administration, essentially, has argued that Mr. Pretty was brandishing a weapon. I didn't see that. He was certainly carrying a weapon, carrying a loaded gun. I don't think that's disputed. And people can debate whether he should have done that or not. But he appeared to be on the ground and suffered, multiple gunshots. I think there were 4 gunshots. About 10 rang out in a matter of a couple of seconds. And obviously he was shot and killed. There were attempts made for people to get to him, to resuscitate him. They weren't allowed in. And I suppose there are 2 narratives out there. One by the Trump administration, which was put out not long after the shooting, and the other by Walz and the Democrats. And it just is emblematic of how fractured and polarised America is.
When Tim Walz speaks about it being an inflection point, does he mean a turning point in some way? Because we see some Republicans now even.
We see some Republicans. I'm looking at it. Bill Cassidy, a Republican from Louisiana, and other senior Republicans have come out. Most of them still a little bit muted in their criticism, calling for a fuller investigation. President Trump gave an interview over the weekend to the Wall Street Journal. He refused to say whether he thinks officers had done the right thing or not. He kind of equivocated on that question. But broadly speaking, him and his administration, Pete Hegseth and other members of the administration,
they're not returning.
They're not. They're unrepented. They're not returning.
So some people are just wondering why Minneapolis. Is there such a concentration of ICE there? Would you just explain that to us? The makeup of the immigration in Minneapolis is what?
There is a large Somali expat community in Minneapolis, and Trump has not spoken fondly of Somalia. He's called it a failed state, and he's used the usual invective about criminals pouring in from it. There's a large Somali expat community there. He also doesn't like a Somali congresswoman, Ilhan Omar. They have quite a heated rivalry. Yeah. As well as that, Minnesota and Minneapolis is effectively governed by Democrats. You mentioned there Tim Walz, the vice presidential nominee for Kamala Harris last year. The mayor, Jacob Fry, is a Democrat. And there is a particular tensions within the city because you've these protests taking place. Obviously, off the back of the death of Renee Good, and they've been going on for the past couple of weeks. They've been taking place in temperatures of minus 25, minus 30 degrees. This is all amid freezing conditions in the city.
Is it worth pointing out, though, Thomas, that this is what Trump said he was going to do? He was going to crack down really hard on immigration.
Yeah, and if you were a Trump supporter, you would say it is working because the flow of immigrants across the border has stopped. There is a deterrent effect. And immigrants are certainly being detained, some of them illegal, but at what cost? Many people are asking, does it create it has effectively created an atmosphere of fear,
yes,
an atmosphere of tension. It's highly febrile, the situation in many cities. Minnesota is Minneapolis is the epicenter of it at the moment. But you are right, you are correct to say that, yeah, this was as promised by President Trump. I'm not sure, though, anyone anticipated how much, the extent to which the crackdown has happened, because it's really been ferocious from what I've seen. And you hear these awful stories of ICE agents grabbing people off the streets and that contributing to a culture of fear. The Trump administration will argue that, if you're a legal resident of the United States, you will have nothing to fear. But I suppose the other side of it is the US does need immigrants, and there are a lot of illegal immigrants in the United States, some of them Irish, and some of them have been there for generations. They've existed in the shadows.
What effect on the midterms? Sometimes it seems to me, is he looking to the midterms at all? Sometimes,
yeah.
But what will this play into the midterms in some way?
I'm starting to think that President Trump cares less about what Americans think anymore, or he's not cared to the same extent.
Because this is his final term.
Because this is his final term. I don't think he's going to run for election. It would be constitutionally, it's not possible. Yeah. He's not going to run in 2028. He's just putting that narrative out there. He has got his second term. He's got all the votes he needed, and he cares more now about his legacy and about his agenda. Now, some of the people around him, and the congressmen and women, and senators on Capitol Hill, and the various politicians at local level, they all care because they need to get elected. And maybe that's why you're seeing a little bit of blowback from Republicans on the ground in various states. But I'm not so sure President Trump, obviously he has what the American people think in mind, but I think he cares more about his own agenda at this stage. Speaking
of that agenda and the legacy, can we talk about Greenland as well for a little bit? And you pointed out in some of your notes, kind of interesting stuff that I had forgotten about, that we could trace this back to 2019 in Trump 1, as they call it. And he expressed that wish to buy Greenland at that point. But is it true that it wasn't about security concerns around that time? Yeah,
this was more his legacy as well as anything else. Apparently there was a businessman, Ronald S. Lauder. Estee Lauder, it means nothing to me, but my mother said it was a fashion company or something like that.
Yeah, perfume company.
Perfume company who first put the idea in his head, and he seemed to run with it. It looks like in some respects a bid for immortality, is how I would put it. There is the question of Arctic security, and that is important for the United States. But as happens so many times with Mr. Trump, I think he identifies a legitimate problem. In this case, ramping up American security in the Arctic, but then he goes way too far. He overreaches spectacularly. Nobody was saying that he needed to acquire Greenland. We've spoken about this before. They can enhance the US military presence there. They can do all those things without taking sovereignty of the island. And as I said last week, he almost, in his quest for Greenland, he almost lost the continent. Were it not for the intervention of the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and whatever kind of deal he brokered, or ad hoc deal, the transatlantic alliance would have been damaged irreparably. Maybe it has been damaged irreparably anyway, because trust seems to have effectively broken down.
Our Friday panel last Friday, and Nina, I was reading from a piece, I can't remember who wrote it, but it was very interesting because he had to stop here in Shannon and refuel Air Force One. And when he took off from Shannon, he left behind him chaos, uncertainty, fragility, it's incredible.
Yeah, a huge fracture in the transatlantic relationship. I mean,
Rupture as
Mark Carney. And Mark Carney's speech was, I watched it again at the weekend. It was an outstanding speech. Yeah. He's an incredible politician. Now, he's come under President Trump has threatened 100% tariffs on him over the weekend. He was not happy he made that speech. President Zelensky's speech was also very interesting at the end. He did not speak fondly of Europe. He criticised them in many ways, and I think a lot of European leaders were surprised at the content of that speech. But certainly, in his wake, President Trump, when he took off from Shannon on Friday, he left behind chaos and destruction. You're absolutely right. But he ultimately was forced to climb down. Rutte pushed him away from the idea of taking Greenland, and he said they were going to resurrect that deal from 1951. It was a climb down for Trump. He didn't win Davos.
That's classic.
Yeah, it is classic Trump. Yeah, he goes in hard and then he rose back from there. Seems to be his negotiating tactic. But he was deadly serious about the Greenland thing.
The natural resources in Greenland, does that play any part?
Yeah, like he has said, it doesn't, but I think it almost certainly does. There are natural resources, minerals, etc., etc. Now, they're buried under copious amounts of ice. Another factor there is the routes that are opening up because of the melting glaciers. There's a route called the Northwest Passage, which it runs through Canada's Arctic kind of archipelago and links the Atlantic to the Pacific. It may be open for transit every summer, and it would cut the route from East Asia to Western Europe by 7,000 kilometres. Now, that's astonishing, and we're that to open up. So you can see the strategic importance of the Arctic and the strategic importance of Greenland. I think it's a bit of an exaggeration to say China and Russia are going to go in and just take it for themselves, carve it up. But certainly they do pose a threat there. So Mr. Trump has a point there. But, going and trying to take the island, and he ruled out force last week in his speech at Davos, which was an extraordinary, sprawling kind of monologue. It was quintessential Trump, really. An hour and a half. And he had given an hour and a half press conference the night before in the White House briefing room.
It's incredible. Can I ask you, though, at the end of the day, has he created a stronger Europe, or has he created a fractured Europe in some sort of a fashion?
I think in the Europe that we have now, there needs to be both. There needs to be people who stand up to Trump, but you also need the Trump whisperers. You need the likes of Mark Rutte and the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, because it's only with a combination of both that you can play Mr. Trump. Certainly, I think a Europe without the alliance of the United States in the short term is weaker. I think in the long term, years from now, when Europe's defence spending increases and when our security architecture improves, maybe people will be thanking Mr. Trump, because there's no doubt that there was a neglect of sorts happening in relation to European defence and security. That and Trump was right to point that out, and maybe that's one of the reasons he enjoys a good relationship with Mark Rutte. Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, his job is to increase defence spending, and Mr. Trump has helped him to do that. But certainly, I think in the short term, without America, Europe is a weaker continent.
All right, let me take a break, Thomas. We'll be back with more in just a few moments.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tip today on 1-800-938-007. Join the conversation in Tipperary. Contact us through Facebook, Twitter, or email tiptoday@tipfm.com.
And you're very welcome back to our global news slot. And Thomas Conway of the Nenagh Guardian is still with me. Before we just move on, just that panel for peace, or that board for peace, of which he will be the lifetime chair. I think,
indeed.
His own life. What about that? I mean, some strange characters already agreeing to be part of this, but does that
some real rogue actors: Vladimir Putin, Alexander Lukashenko, Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, I heard
some war criminals.
Some war criminals, effectively. Yeah. And I heard Mary Robinson on the radio this morning. She was very much against it. It wouldn't be, that's not surprising, but it looks like it's one of its objectives is to overtake the UN, the United Nations, and that to me is very worrying. Now, at the same time, the United Nations has proven itself to be quite dysfunctional and quite ineffective over the past 2 years.
And in need of reform.
And badly in need of reform. But that is the key thing. I think it's in need of reform. It's not in need of replacement. And that's what Trump is seeking to do. It's as if this idea only entered his head in recent months, because the Board of Peace was initially to oversee the Gaza reconstruction and that, and suddenly he got the idea that it could be a bigger, broader project and he could be at the heart of it. Again, I think he's looking here at his legacy. Notice that he can be president for life, which will extend beyond his step down, his departure from the White House. And countries people will have to pay $1 billion after 3 years to retain their membership.
And we don't know where that money is going to.
Yeah,
going to go,
indeed. So it's quite unsettling. It's, if it maintains peace in Gaza, but I'm not sure it should replace the UN. I don't think it should replace the UN.
All right. Talk to me about what's happening in India. Remarkable recovery there.
Yeah, 16 months ago, Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, he was kind of utterly chastened. He just lost his majority in a national election, forced to lean on regional parties to form a government, but he's come bouncing back. And today things look rather different. His coalition has won a string of state elections, and the opposition, led by the Congress Party and a man called Rahul Gandhi, whom we've spoken about before, is effectively in disarray. His government has kind of regained its mojo, and Modi is a career politician. He's remarkably successful. He's age 75. People expect him to run in 2029 when the next Indian general election comes around. He has his eyes on becoming the longest Indian prime minister in history. And the reason his party, the BJP, has bounced back, and parties in this country could learn. They've identified the mistakes they've made in the election campaign, and they've actually sought to fix them. They've recognised that inflation was a huge concern around the election. That's one of the reasons they failed to do well in the polls. They've tackled it. They've taken action to improve the food supply. They've looked at distribution and supply chains. So they've actually taken action.
Yes, and on the political spectrum, he populist, right?
Yeah, he's a Hindu nationalist, so he would be a populist.
Anti-Muslim.
Yeah, very much anti-Muslim. So he's a nationalistic character. India is obviously a majority Hindu country.
Yes.
Modi leans heavily into that. Now, he's done things in the past like consecrated and built Hindu temples in place of synagogues, Muslim synagogues and things like that. So quite a divisive, to an extent divisive, but largely popular. He's a 70% approval rating, I was reading at the weekend.
How much of that is that he stood up to Trump?
Yeah, that's a major factor, and we've seen that phenomenon or that trend play out across the world. Mark Carney, Albanese in Australia, and Modi as well. He has effectively stood up to Trump. You'll remember Trump threatened or imposed tariffs because India was buying Russian oil. He's kind of stood firm against Mr. Trump, and he was a great buddy of Mr. Trump in the past. As well as that, with something which helped and benefited him, India fought kind of a 4-day war with Pakistan last May. There was ballistic missiles. There was a terrorist attack in Kashmir, a disputed province in the northwest. Fighting ensued, and that is there's kind of a rally round the flag effect when that happens. It helps his own standing, and he's seen as a strongman leader, and that has lent into his popularity.
Interesting. Can we go to... I'm kind of intrigued at what's happening in Japan, because yet another election. Yet another election,
indeed. And this time it's Sanai Takaichi, the new Prime Minister. The woman who gets up, sleeps purportedly an hour a night, and gets up and holds cabinet meetings in the middle of the night.
Like Margaret Thatcher.
Quite like Margaret Thatcher. But the Japanese are going to go for the polls in the second time in just over a year, amid stubborn concerns over the cost of living, and that really is the issue.
She called this, didn't she?
She called a snap election.
Yeah.
She wants to secure a mandate.
Yes.
She was appointed Prime Minister a couple of months ago. She's obviously the leader of the LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party, and they have governed Japan for much of its post-war history since 1955. Now, chances are they will get back into government again, and she will be Prime Minister. That's almost a foregone conclusion. The question is, will she secure an outright majority, or will she have to rely on other parties? Because there are a number of kind of rising, generally right-wing upstart parties coming into the fray in Japanese
And where
politics.
does she lie on the spectrum?
She's centre right.
Okay.
She's a conservative. She would be socially quite conservative, but I get the sense she is pragmatic. She's highly pragmatic. I won't call her a populist, but
Well, she picked a row with China.
she did pick a row with China, yeah, and there are huge tensions there, huge tensions in relation to China. But she, to an extent, has stood up to the Chinese and stood up to Xi Jinping. And no more than Modi in India. You know, when you stand up and when you put the country's first interests at heart, people kind of admire you for it. So she has stood up to China. She's talking about hiking military spending, but she's also talking about improving or introducing measures for the cost of living, a cost of living package and stuff like that. So there are indications. I think she will secure a mandate. The question really is whether her party's vote is eroded by a number of right-wing parties, one of which is called Sanseto. It's a far-right party which has emerged in Japanese politics in recent years into conspiracy theories and stuff like that. You know, Japan first,
Yes.
championing the kind of MAGA rhetoric. So it'll be very interesting to see how they do. They were doing well. They've gone off the ball to an extent, but I would keep my eye on them.
Right, but if she pulled this snap election, she must be rather positive.
Yeah, she's bullish. She's confident in her ability. And if she wins, I mean, she'll come under pressure to chart a more moderate fiscal course. But she'll need to kind of satisfy demand around the cost of living, and she'll need to boost military spending. That is crucial.
We alluded to China there just a few moments ago, but what's happening there as well?
Yeah, this is a highly
corruption.
Yeah, it's a highly significant move by the Chinese leader Xi Jinping. He has effectively sacked two of his leading generals, General Zhang Zhujia and Liu Zhenli, two high-level military officials. They're one of the most trusted military advisors. They're kind of at the head of the People's Liberation Army, that massive 2 million strong Chinese military. And this isn't the first time Mr. Xi has sacked senior members. He did it after he came to power in 2012. There was a period in 2023, but this is being kind of labelled as a purge. And it shows, I think, it demonstrates how ruthless Xi Jinping is. One of the generals, General Zhang, was apparently a close friend and had a good personal relationship with him. He has sacked him now. This isn't the first time there have been allegations of graft in the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, but he obviously wants to clean it up and make it a capable fighting force, capable, I suggest, of taking Taiwan in the coming years.
Very interesting. And Russia and Ukraine, then, they concluded talks in Abu Dhabi. But what the outcome of that?
Yeah, uncertain. I mean, we heard Zelensky's speech at Davos last week. There were Russian attacks over the weekend, and I'm not sure a whole lot of progress is being made. I mean, President Trump said we're getting closer to a deal there. Like, it seems to be stagnating. And
well, Zelensky said that almost 100% deal with security from America.
yeah, he said security guarantees, but
What is this about?
yeah, you would have to question it. And personally, I would be critical of the way Zelensky treated Europe in that speech.
I thought I was appalled by it.
Yeah, and I'm not, I'd be able to criticise Europe myself, but Europe has lent it's the leading donor collectively,
190 billion and another 90 billion or something.
Yeah, and for all the, the talk about the reparations package and the freezing Russian assets, okay, that didn't happen, but they secured something in its place to fund Ukraine over the next few years. So, I think a lot of European leaders, Friedrich Merz and co., would have been unhappy with.
So what was that about? Because everybody seemed surprised.
Yeah, was it playing into Mr. Trump? Was it trying to, ingratiate himself to Mr. Trump?
By criticising
Europe,
biting the hand that feeds you, though.
Yeah, indeed, and that will feed you in the future, and that may welcome you into the European Union. You have to consider that. But certainly, in terms of the peace talks, they're not going nowhere. But they're not going somewhere either.
I try to talk to you every week about Iran, particularly where your prediction is concerned that eventually there will be an attack. But I saw a figure in the newspaper today. 33,000 were killed as that regime threatened all-out war on the US. But 33,000 of their own people.
Yeah, I've seen figures like that as well. I mean, it could proved to be one of the most significant massacres in recent history anywhere. When you think about it, if those numbers you're quoting are to be believed, I still am firm in my prediction that I think America will launch some sort of strike. Now, the reason I think I've held back for now is that a lot of Arab leaders have urged caution, have urged President Trump to tread carefully here. The likes of Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, the likes of the Qatari leader Al Thani, because they obviously are, and Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu, they are obviously afraid that if America strikes, they will suffer the brunt of the retaliation. And I suppose those are valid concerns. But I think Trump would be missing an opportunity if he doesn't launch some sort of strike. I think Iran is a rogue regime. There's lots of rogue regimes around the place. But if Trump wants to burnish his legacy, or if he wants to have a real legacy in the Middle East, if the Iran regime were to change, I mean, that would be a huge problem solved for America.
It's interesting, and there wouldn't be Arab support for Iran either.
No, because there's a regional rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia that characterises a lot of the goings going on in the Middle East,
Right.
and then there's that rivalry with Israel.
It would be seen as handing a gift to Israel, though, wouldn't it, if he did attack?
Yeah, to an extent, yeah. And it's interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, you look at Netanyahu, and he obviously has a very close relationship with Netanyahu, but he's not afraid to go against him, Trump. I mean, he did push him for that ceasefire agreement and peace deal. So it would be very interesting to see how it develops, but it's amazing the way the news agenda moves on with President Trump.
Isn't it just indeed? Thomas, pleasure as always.
Thank you
so much for your time. Thomas Conway of the Nina Guardian. News and information is coming up.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.